Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.
Hello and welcome to Capes on the Couch, where comics get counseling. I'm Anthony Sitko.
And I'm Dr. Issues.
And we are joined today by our very, very special guests, our friends over at Popcorn Psychology. Why don't you folks say hello?
Hi, I'm Brittany. I'm a child therapist.
My name is Ben. I'm an individual therapist.
And my name is Hannah. I'm a marriage and family therapist.
So we are so grateful to have the three of you on the show. We're big fans of your show. And I know we reached out to you guys on Twitter a while back and talked about a crossover because of the similarity in the concepts of the shows. Popcorn Psychology does the psychoanalysis of blockbuster films, I think is a fair way to describe it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So it just seemed natural and appropriate that we would find an area to cross over, because I think there's been a couple of superhero films, films about comic book characters that we can talk about, just one or two. Exactly. Yeah. There's a handful. So we got to chatting. And so here we are today on our 32nd issue, our 32nd episode. We will be discussing the Incredible Hulk. One Bruce Banner. So before we get into the Hulk bit, first off, just to further introduce yourselves, why don't you guys tell us a little bit about who you are and why our listeners should be even concerned with your opinions?
Well, we all work together at a private practice in Chicago, more specifically the Lakeview area. It's called Ardent Counseling Center. And we've worked together about 3-4 years. And like I said, we all have a different expertise. I am a child therapist. I've worked in partial hospital programs in Ohio. In Illinois, I work with all ages. And then we kind of get because we all have different specialties with the podcast, we're able to kind of hit the people we're talking about from different angles and talk about a lot of different topics because of that.
Excellent.
I am a individual counselor primarily. I work with adults more often. I have worked with children. I used to work in a residential facility, and now I am the clinical director of an outpatient clinic where I focus on adults with anxiety, depression, and trauma primarily.
And I kind of come in and talk about families, groups, and couples, which in most movies, there's always a part of that. So that's kind of what I add. So really, we're able to talk about movies in all different ways and pull out the parts that are mental health just to help people understand what it's really like. Because the media does such a bad job.
Almost swore.
Got myself together. They do such a poor job of portraying what mental illness is really like, and treatment and relationships between therapists and clients. So we just wanted to find a way that would just give people more information in general.
And I think it's which is probably similar to why you guys did yours, is it's cooler way to teach people about mental health. People might not necessarily want to straight up learn about, trauma and cognitive behavioral therapy, but they might be like, ooh, what is Norman Bates' deal in Psycho? And so that's kind of a sneaky way in to bringing about mental health awareness.
Exactly.
Right, and
exactly.
What triggered the idea for us
time.
was The Last Jedi and all the backlash. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I'm part of the 501st, so I'm a big Star Wars nerd. And the toxic dialogue around The Last Jedi was really what triggered us to start this podcast, because we viewed Luke's portrayal in that as someone with post-traumatic stress disorder, and his behaviors were clearly defined by that, and it made absolute sense for why he was acting the way he did, and people's backlash to it, for he's not a hero anymore, he's not the hopeful character he was, and we're like, hold on, let's make an accessible way to dispel some of the stigma and help educate people on hey, this is what it might actually look like if someone encountered such range of trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the Last Jedi episode, you know, and a number of your episodes. And you guys have done a couple of superhero movies. I know you did Batman Begins. I know you did Captain America Civil War. Any other comic book films?
Logan.
Logan, yes.
Oh, that was excellent.
I don't think I've listened to the Logan episode.
I did, and you guys are fantastic with that.
Thank
you so much.
And I think the one I listened to of yours was Wolverine, funny enough.
All right.
Because that's the one probably, I don't read comic books, but that's probably the character, probably because there's just so much movie of him that I felt like I knew the most about going into your podcast.
Yeah, and I also, I really liked the Harry Potter one. Was it years 1 through 4 or whatever, the first like 3 or 4 movies. So I'm definitely interested in hearing what you guys come up with for the latter half, especially as they get older. So that's sort of like I said, why we figured it was a good and appropriate opportunity for a crossover. So we're going to talk about the Incredible Hulk as a character, and then we are going to also be guesting on their show, and we're going to be discussing the Incredible Hulk film, the Edward Norton,
Which one?
Edward Norton one, not the Eric Bana one.
Thank you. Okay.
So just to clarify
We just don't discuss the Eric Bana version.
What, you don't like Nick Nolte and gamma radiated dogs?
You know, I actually don't. I've found that whole depiction of the Hulk just to be bland and kind of offensive to the character. So
yeah, I think that's universal at this point.
Yeah, I think so. It got pretty hardly panned.
Yes, Universal does, in fact, own the distribution rights, and that's why there's not another... you knew that when you said it. Yes, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. I saw what you did there. So real quick, just to remind everybody before we get started again, where can they find y'all on social media and your websites?
We're Popcorn Psychology on Facebook and Instagram. It's at popcorn_psych at Twitter. And then we have a Gmail, popcornpsychology@gmail.com, that anybody can send us anything they feel about it too. And then, just Popcorn Psychology on all platforms. I think the only one we're not on yet is Spotify.
Okay. Excellent. Well, our fans know you can find us on Facebook, Instagram. We've got capesonthecouch@gmail.com, and you can find us on Google Play, iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, and we are on Spotify. So
we've applied. We're just waiting approval now. We just switched over from Blog Talk Radio to Spreaker, so we've got some new platforms coming our way.
Okay, very cool. Yeah, we're on Libsyn. I don't know. I don't remember. I looked at all the different hosting platforms, and we just we liked what Libsyn.
And by he means me on that one, but whatever.
Well, you had to do something.
Yes, you're right. Because no, it's true. He's the tech guy. I just happen to bring a random thing about being a psychiatrist in this thing.
Yeah, we literally can't do the show without him.
We can't do the show without Ben. He's our tech guy.
There you go. See, they need us. They mock us, Ben.
That's true.
When things break, but when things break down, then all of a sudden, oh hey, so this doesn't work. Can we get some help over here?
Right. Why doesn't it record my voice? Like, did you plug it in?
You're real lucky we can't swear on this podcast.
Did you try turning it off and turning it on again?
I'll pay for that later.
Yes, when we get to there, so that's the main. One of the other main differences. We thoroughly encourage you to listen, but their show is definitely not safe for work audio. So if you are listening around children, I would advise you to have them leave the room, or otherwise just explain to them what some of those naughty words mean. And
we include content warnings for some of our episodes, but we do deep dives into some intense topics like, sexual abuse, things like that. So I would recommend to look at our content episode, descriptions, maybe before diving into maybe the first episode or two you listen to, just in case, you have your own stuff that's triggering or just things you don't care to listen to because it's hard.
Yeah, absolutely. And if our fans want to hear not safe for work content, they can go to our Patreon, patreon.com/capesonthecouch, where there will be an uncensored version of this skit. And if there happen to be any obscenities that slip out of anybody's mouth during this episode, the unbleeped version will be available on Patreon. So the Incredible Hulk as a character, Bruce Banner, was created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby in the Incredible Hulk #1, May of 1962. And before we continue, this is our first episode that we've recorded since the passing of Stan Lee. And I have to tell you, it hurt me a lot. I know he was certainly, you know, of the age where, I mean, you know, you say 95 years old, that's a good life. That is a good, solid life. But it still it hurt me. And I was mowing the lawn when I got my phone just blew up with notifications. Stanley. And I stood on my front lawn sobbing. I'm not even going to lie. I started crying just from everything that Stanley has meant to myself. And I know to Doc, and I'm sure to you know, millions of people around the world. Stanley's characters and creations have resonated with audiences for decades upon decades. And it is rare to have that kind of an impact on pop culture. And so, you know, we would not have a show, I dare say, without Stan Lee. And that's a good point. His contributions to society and to pop culture.
Yeah, he basically created a parallel universe where we can discuss these things without, for example, I can't bring patients on a show like this and say, hey, you know, let's break HIPAA and talk about lots of private things so that people can understand what mental health is like, you know, but characters, not a problem.
Yeah, and
it makes a nice and accessible way for people to realize that you can have issues, you can be a person who lives with difficulties, but you can still use what makes you unique to strive through that and break through the barriers that life throws up.
Absolutely. He definitely humanized superheroes in a way that had not been done on a grand scale before, even just going back to the Fantastic Four and the way of introducing a superhero family that were all superheroes with powers, but had their own foibles and personal dynamics and relationship issues and problems and so on and so forth. And it spawned an entire, you know, new way of thinking of comic books, where it wasn't just, I'm the good guy and I'm going to do what's right because it's what's right. Like I have deep-seated issues that drive me to be a good person, or deep-seated problems to, you know, turn me into a villain. And you can flow between hero and villain in a world created, you know, of Stan Lee's created characters. I read somewhere an article he created in his tenure over 1,200 separate characters. He either created or co-created 1,200 characters over his tenure at Marvel. Right. And that is unreal.
That's incredible.
Yeah. It is incredible, like the Hulk. So,
see what I did there?
I see what you did there. I see what you did there. Thank you for that. We love our puns on this show, so feel free to let them fly. The profanity doesn't fly, but the puns come fast and furious. So in The Incredible Hulk, Robert Bruce Banner saves a young Rick Jones from the detonation of a gamma bomb, but in the process gets hit with radiation. When he becomes angered or stressed, he turns into a large green hulking creature, originally gray due to the coloring process. The very first issue of the Hulk, the Hulk creature was gray, and it wasn't until I think about the second or third issue that they formalized that he became green. So the Hulk famously goes on to found the Avengers, but he leaves the team shortly thereafter because of an inability to cooperate with other heroes. So the military discovers Hulk's true identity, begins a hunt for him, led by General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross and Major Glenn Talbot. Side note, if you're a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which I am, Adrian Pasdar does an amazing job as Glenn Talbot in the show, and I'm a big fan particularly of his mustache. It's just, I think Glenn Talbot's mustache is what gives him the gravitas and the authority. So if you're a fan of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., you know what I'm talking about. Did any of you three watch the show?
I do. I haven't got caught up. I watched the seasons, I think, up to season 3 or 4, and I hadn't encountered Talbot just yet.
Yeah, I just started season 4, so I'm also behind.
I think season 4 is where late season 3 or season 4 is where we get introduced to Major Talbot, and his mustache is the thing of beauty. I am envious of it. As someone, oh my God, as someone who cannot grow facial hair.
I'm actually the odd man out on this. I'm very surprised at myself. Yeah, because I watched the first 2 seasons of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and I never got back into it.
I literally just dipped my toe back into it 4 days ago. So it's just serendipitous that you bring it up. And I was like, I'm going to get back in and see how I feel about it. So we're tentative. We're in a probation period of our relationship, me and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., but we might fall back in love. We'll see.
Well, there's a podcast, Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D., on the GonnaGeek.com network, and they talk about Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and all the other MCU shows. It's pretty solid. So now Banner is in love with Betty Ross, the general's daughter, but she also has feelings for Glenn Talbot. So there's like a little bit of a triangle there, and obviously Talbot is on the search for Banner, the Hulk, to capture him. And as we say, particularly in this episode, we're not really going to delve too deeply into the character's comic book history. I feel like if you're listening to this episode, there's a very high chance that you already know who the Incredible Hulk is. So we're not going to go too deep into the history, into the weeds on the character, because we want to get to the issues, but we do want to touch on some of the things that have happened to the character over the years in the comics. So Banner's basically one of the key things is that Banner's control over the Hulk and the Hulk's intelligence have kind of waxed and waned a bit throughout the decades. At one point in the mid 1980s, Banner and Hulk were actually two physically separate entities. That there was, Bruce Banner was just a regular person, and the Hulk was, completely separate. But they ended up remerging in 1986. Later, we are introduced to Joe Fixit, who's a Vegas enforcer and handyman, and he's another persona of the Hulk. And I love the Joe Fixit character.
Yeah, same here. I remember there was some crossover. I wouldn't even say crossover, just Wolverine has to be in everything. So there are a few of them.
And we discussed that in the Wolverine episode.
Yeah, well, there are a few comics where they both serve as bouncers. And just the dynamic between the two with Hulk as Joe Fixit, it's pretty funny if you can look it up,
I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yeah, definitely give it a read. So in the 1990s, the different versions of the Hulk and Banner merge into the Professor persona. This contains Banner's intelligence, Grey Hulk's cunning, and the Savage Hulk's power. So then we get to 2006, and one of the main biggest storylines involving the Hulk is the Planet Hulk, which leads into World War Hulk. The Illuminati, who we referenced in the Doctor Strange episode, as a collection of some of the greatest, smartest minds in the Marvel Universe. They've decided that the Hulk is too dangerous to exist on Earth because he's constantly rampaging and going on the loose. So they trick him into going onto a rocket ship, and then they send him away. Now, they intend for him to go to a desolate planet to just be by himself. Unfortunately, he goes through a wormhole and he ends up on Sakaar, which, if you've seen Thor Ragnarok, the film, draws a lot of its inspiration for that storyline from the Planet Hulk storyline, both as Sakaar as a planet, and then just, the gladiators. So that is based somewhat on the Planet Hulk storyline. Have you guys seen Ragnarok?
Oh, we loved it.
So good.
Loved it.
Yeah, man, it's a great movie, right? I'm gonna go spend some pamphlets, eh?
It's fun.
Yeah,
it's one of my favorites.
I want to start a revolution.
Because I just like Taika Waititi so much, the director.
Oh yeah, man, he's great.
You're just gonna keep going with it.
Listen, no, this is my friend Doug. Doug's dead. Sorry. Hello, new Doug.
Wait. I feel like I need to explain for anybody that's really just getting introduced to us. Anthony has a great skill when it comes to using voices and doing other characters, which is where we got the idea of doing skits in the first place. So yeah, he just goes in and out like this all the time. It's incredible how fluidly he does that.
The fans of the show know, but so for the popcorn psych fans who haven't listened to us yet, yeah, I'm a big fan of Ragnarok and anything Jeff Goldblum. Really, he steals that film.
Man.
Yes. So on Sakaar, he becomes champion of the planet, and he gets married to Kyra, who gives him 2 sons. And then she dies in an explosion of the ship. And so Hulk returns to Earth because he believes that the ship was detonated by the people on Earth to abandon him there. And so he returns to Earth, and it's amazing when he comes back because he lands and he just says he's the Hulk, but he just steps out of the ship and he says very plainly, Earth, I have come to smash. And that's when in the words of Kevin Hart, it's about to go down.
Yeah.
So he's going to take his revenge on Illuminati. I have to say the Planet Hulk storyline I liked better than World War Hulk. I liked the setup and conceptually World War Hulk, but I think it kind of tailed off. But Planet Hulk as a storyline is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think you can relate to the idea that you have unfortunate circumstances beyond your control. You make the best of it. You actually start to develop a family life. and that gets completely destroyed due to violence, and now you have to return to the scene of, where everything started. Ouch.
And you want to take revenge on the people you think are responsible.
Yeah. Oof.
So Bruce gets shot in the head, and Iron Man uses the Extremis technology to heal him, but this has the side effect of creating Doc Green, which is a super intelligent Hulk. So he's got the Hulk's strength, but Banner's intelligence, and that's a dangerous combination. So in Original Sin, we discover Tony Stark altered the gamma bomb that created the Hulk, but it's later revealed that his tampering ensured that the bomb wouldn't disintegrate everyone within the blast radius, so it really turns out that Tony Stark saved Bruce's life. I actually have the Original Sin. It's Original Sin 3.1 or whatever is the side story. It's like 3 issues of just Tony and the Hulk. And it goes back. It's drawn in like a very 60s reminiscent style because it's supposed to be back in the early days of Marvel Comics. So Iron Man is wearing like the steel gray armor that he pulls out of the suitcase. And yeah. I mean, because again, this is like it's supposed to be set in the very early stages of the Marvel Universe.
Wow. Okay.
What?
No, that's fine. I'm just thinking to myself, like, is there anything that Tony Stark doesn't like have an influence on?
No.
Oh my gosh.
No, definitely not in the MCU.
No, and this was written
or
like
his
post,
daddy.
Post Iron Man. Yeah, exactly. So Axis, which I did not care for as a storyline, inverted morality Bruce becomes Kla. Because Wanda inverts everybody's morality so that good people are bad people are good, and apparently now the Hulk becomes Kla.
I just realized that's Hulk backwards. Sorry.
Yes, Kla, Clue. I don't. Yeah. So he destroys the rest of the Avengers until they resurrect Brother Voodoo, who helps undo Wanda's inversion. Brother Voodoo's just a bad dude.
Yeah,
I'm a big
we mentioned him in our Doctor Strange episode.
Yes, we did. At one point, he was a Sorcerer Supreme. So the all-new Hulk, Amadeus Cho becomes the new Hulk after using nanites to absorb the Hulk's gamma radiation, like the essence of the Hulk. He takes it from Bruce Banner. So now Amadeus Cho becomes the Hulk and Bruce is just sort of left alone. And then it's kind of cool, though, because Bruce discovers that he almost has like a death wish. And he starts doing really risky behavior as a way that he sees to sort of amend for all of the damage that he created while he was the Hulk. So he's like, well, if I die, if I die, I die, like whatever it makes up for. Yeah, it's an interesting conceptual storyline. And from a psychological standpoint, we'll get into that in a little bit. So in Civil War II, Banner was killed by Hawkeye, who revealed that Banner ordered Hawkeye to kill him if he ever tried to turn back into the Hulk. So if you were, if you're wondering where Hawkeye was in Avengers Infinity War, that's what he was doing. He was. But it's recently revealed in the new Immortal Hulk storyline that Banner is alive and the Hulk has returned. But so if the Hulk can only come out at night and only if Bruce has been killed during the day. So if Bruce gets killed during the day, then the Hulk appears at night and resurrects Bruce.
Wow. That sounds complicated.
Yeah. That's
Vampire Hulk.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Vampire.
We just sort of say, well, it's comics.
Yeah.
Right. Some suspension of belief is necessary.
Exactly.
Just a titch.
Yeah.
So that's basically the comic story. I don't know, Ben, have you, I know you're I don't want to like put you on the spot, but they told me you're the resident comic nerd of the group. So I will turn it over to you to see if, what are your experiences reading the Hulk? Do you have any connection to the character or any feelings?
I don't have a lot of deep connection to Hulk. I know my dad had bought me a couple Hulk comics when I was a kid because I was a football player and into working out, and he would call me Hulk sometimes. But he had bought me a few of those, so that's my connection to that. And we had read a few episodes where Hulk was doing some throwing tanks through walls. I don't remember the episode, but my experience with Hulk has been mostly through the films.
Okay.
Same.
So nobody watched the TV show with Lou Ferrigno and Bill Bixby?
I mean, I have vague memories of like the sad walk into the distance.
Yes, the walking away music.
Do. Yeah. And is it the end of every episode? Because I know it's also been parodied a lot. is like the sad Hulk song.
Oh yeah, Family Guy did it all the time.
He's like Family Guy would do it all the time, like hitchhiking.
Play the sad Hulk walking away music.
And then I've met Lou Ferrigno when I was a waitress. He came into the restaurant I worked at. So that's my random coolest connection to the Hulk, I guess.
That is awesome.
That's badass. That is pretty cool. So let's move into the issues now. So we're going to sort of, I guess, roundtable this. Because we've got so many people who, can expound on the psychological aspects, and then I'm just the idiot moderator.
See, he keeps doing that. He is so self-deprecating about his role in these things. Now Anthony, first of all, has a radio background, so him as being like the person to coordinate this was perfect. But also he does bring a lot to the table. Don't do that, man. Come on.
I'm self-deprecating. It's by my nature.
Way to therapy him in the moment.
Very well done.
He's been doing it for 20 plus years.
That was a redirection in clinical terms. Let's redirect that negative thought.
Yes.
Positive reframe.
So the first issue we're going to talk about, and I think it's blatantly obvious that the Hulk as a character is sort of a metaphor for impulse control disorders, particularly intermittent explosive disorder.
All right. All right.
That was Doc.
I'm gonna jump in here because there's certainly parts of the criteria that he doesn't meet. I'm just gonna go ahead and bring up my DSM here. That I keep this on my phone.
I also have mine open next to me. How cute.
Well, see, there. Thank you, Brittany. So
all right. So
Doc, you're not alone in your nerdiness.
I'd like to think so, since it's my job.
Exactly.
And ours. Yeah, that's a pretty important factor of the job, to have your DSM out at all times.
Right. All right. So intermittent explosive disorder, recurrent behavioral outbursts representing a failure to control aggressive impulses as manifested by either of the following. Okay. Part 1, verbal aggression, examples given: temper tantrums, tirades, verbal arguments or fights, or physical aggression toward property, animals, other individuals, occurring twice weekly on average for a period of 3 months. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not going to go through all the comics, and I'm not going to time it. In the movie, actually, they do time it. He goes months and months without actually having anything happen. So, he wouldn't meet criteria with that. But after that, Number 2, 3 behavioral outbursts involving damage or destruction of property and or physical assault involving physical injury against animals or other individuals occurring within a 12-month period. Oh, that fits.
Check.
Magnitude of aggressiveness expressed during the recurrent outburst is grossly out of proportion to the provocation or to any precipitating psychosocial stressors. I'll say that can be challenged in the sense that some of the stressors that he, gets provoked, they're actually pretty serious. When you have some of these major villains that are really going after him, or you have the military shooting weapons at him, I think it's okay to get aggressive back. I'm not advocating violence. I'm just saying I could understand.
But I know what you mean. It definitely feels like his reaction is meeting the trigger in terms of level of intensity and actual fear for safety or safety of others.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, when they call an Apache helicopter to shoot Hellfire missiles at you, I think it's justified to get a little upset.
Yeah.
Because it's not like he goes to the sandwich shop and they don't have mayonnaise and he becomes the Hulk.
Right.
That would be more like the disproportionate situation.
Exactly. Yep.
And
I'd like to buy this shoe. No, they don't have it in your size.
Yeah.
Right.
Hulk smash.
Right. And also that the Hulk, that part of him, is almost always met with being attacked.
Yeah.
So if he, psychologically, if he was kind of had 2 different sets of memories, the Hulk has only really experienced all these negative things that happen. People are after him. He has to be afraid. So I feel like it makes sense that he is mad all the time or scared, and that might just come out like
he
that.
Goes to that level every time.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. What else we got here? The recurrent aggressive outbursts are not premeditated. Examples, they're impulsive or anger based and are not committed to achieve some tangible objective. Examples given: money, power, intimidation. I'm pretty sure Bruce isn't saying, for the most part, let me make sure I lose control at the worst possible times, when I really don't want to. No, it's definitely
right. His catchphrase is "You wouldn't like me when I'm angry." He's consistently warning people that he's and striving to not get that angry.
Exactly. And my phone decides to cut off for some reason. Doggone
See, it's funny when you mentioned, when we were talking about like intermittent explosive disorder, all I could think of was Randy Orton, but that's a topic for just a whole other time.
Oh my God.
He's a wrestler.
Yeah. Why do we have to talk about Randy Orton at all? Because I just don't like him as a wrestler. But anyway, I apologize, guys. We go on such tangents.
We'll try to keep them
It's
contained.
okay. We go on tangents sometimes as well.
Yeah, we've been doing that a little bit more lately on some of our episodes, getting into more speculative land of going, what if this completely ridiculous thing happened? And like, let's debate it for the next 37 minutes.
Hey, Psycho, I feel like was the greatest tangent episode that you guys have done, because I think that was pretty much the entire premise. It
was like a tangent that became a thesis. It like evolved into its truest form.
Yeah, that's a good description.
I think we agree with you. I was like, wait, I just had an idea. Let's just go now.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So also, chronological age is at least 6 years or equivalent developmental level. You know what? That brings up an interesting point, because we know that
That's what
we were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, Banner, he's an adult, but the Hulk itself, what are
He's like a baby, right?
That?
I said multiple times when we watched The Incredible Hulk last night, he is a big baby. Not in like the you're such a big baby, but like a literal baby, like in developmental. And it's kind of something this is another tangent that I wanted to pose to, and what you get your guys' opinion is like, is the Hulk supposed to be like a little kid? Because I know in like Thor Ragnarok, what's supposed to be interesting is that since he is Hulk for like 2 or 3 years straight, he like develops language and social skills and stuff, kind of as if he goes from infancy to like toddlerdom to like little kiddom.
Yeah, the director definitely mentioned that they took the Hulk and he sort of grew up a little bit, and he's a little more fluent with his language. He's got more control and grasp over concepts. He's able to have that relationship with Valkyrie. So, that he's definitely grown and matured somewhat. And that's one of the issues that he has with Thor coming back, is because Thor reminds him of when he was younger, quote unquote. And, at an earlier time. And it brings back all those negative memories. So
I'm even thinking about it in terms of, well, you mentioned the language. It's incredibly immature for what you would expect for something that big. So that definitely fits the child situation. And then what scares me about it is the schema that he has to be developing, because he's literally born into violence and destruction, like towards him. That's what's bringing him out.
Right.
Yeah.
And when kids are born into that environment, that's all they know. And so they tend to react and continue to react aggressively until they have a role model that shows them something different.
So based on that, it sounds like there might be an argument that Hulk is showing characteristics of reactive attachment disorder.
True.
That's a good point.
Which is, I can break it down like super quickly. It's just when you have some sort of abusive upbringing, as a little kid, either neglect or abuse of some sort, or you're like thrown around to a bunch of different households, so you don't have like proper attachments where you feel secure and loved and stuff. And so then you tend to either be super familiar with people, like strangers and stuff, like saying I love you to strangers when you're a child and walking up to random strangers and hugging them and stuff, which is unsafe. Or you are super, I guess, Hulk-like, where you are very reactive. Everyone's a threat. You're standoffish at best, aggressive at worst. And it does have a randomness to it in terms of what will make them go off.
All right.
That definitely sounds like the Hulk.
Yeah.
So the next issue, and this is something that's not entirely psychological or psychiatric in nature, but we just wanted to mention it. And Doc, you were the one who introduced this. Radiation doesn't turn you into the Hulk. What does it do?
Yeah, the reason I bring it up, I couldn't help it, because so much of everything that's written or put in movies, it involves the whole gamma thing, gamma radiation. Ooh, spooky, scary. Well, it is scary. I mean, basically it's a high energy frequency that leads to tissue destruction in most living things if it's exposed, for a prolonged period of time. The good news is there are good ways that we've learned to harness that. If you've ever heard of a gamma knife, which is specifically for brain surgery, where they can really pinpoint radiation for certain tumors without damaging other brain tissue, that's a fantastic positive use for it. All the other gamma stuff, the reason why it got such a bad name is because it had to do with nuclear fission, which, is what leads to bombs, which we know is what led to the Hulk, quote unquote, developing in the first place. But also, in general, we use the destructive nature of gamma in not chemotherapy, it's radiation therapy, but they often are just used interchangeably mistakenly. But the point being, gamma radiation affects a lot of people because they have to make a choice when they're given a certain diagnosis of cancer or they're being diagnosed, that they have to expose themselves to something that we know is toxic to human beings, and it's supposed to make them feel better. But in the time being that they're getting the treatment, they're usually feeling much worse. Radiation sickness is something that, many cancer survivors can tell you about, and it is not fun. Anybody that's had radiation treatment for any type of jaw cancer, head cancer especially, they say the pain is unbearable and actually has a high suicide rate. So the reason I bring that up, this is something that this character had been exposed to from the start. So I'm not exactly sure you're going to end up with, even though you have the Hulk side of things that is all super strong and tough and durable and all of that. What did that do to the human side with Bruce?
I guess...
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't know this answer, but does he have pain when he's the human version of himself? Or is Hulk is his body changed so much that because he has to heal from getting big and then small the way he does? So I'm assuming he has some sort of healing capabilities, but I wonder if he feels the ramifications when he's in human form.
I don't know. That's an excellent point.
Absolutely.
Because that would really bring down his quality of life other than everything else. But if he's in chronic pain or just illness, fatigue. I mean, he seems like he's okay. None of the movies ever demonstrate him seeming tore up when he's miserable, the human version of himself. But I don't know. That would definitely because that's what people say, you're saying with cancer and treatment, the treatment can be worse than how it feels to have the cancer.
Yeah, I'm a cancer survivor, and I feel so fortunate. I did not have to go with radiation or chemo. Surgery was enough for me, but being in the treatment and milieu and seeing people going through it, it was really scary and really hard.
Wow, that's a fascinating story. Thank you. So much for that. I'm certainly glad that you've recovered and that thankfully it wasn't serious enough to have any major lasting impact. Knock on wood. So thank you for that. So the next thing that I guess we're going to get into then is the paranoia, and I think this is just it's across all iterations of the Hulk that the Hulk is constantly being hunted. He's constantly being tracked either by the military who want to capture him and study him, or villains who want to take him down, or other heroes who want to, find him and bring him onto the team, whatever. And it's for Banner and the Hulk, and both iterations, both halves of the persona, if you will, are aware that they are being tracked. And, Hulk says it himself, Hulk want to be left alone. He's constantly saying that, Hulk just wants to be left alone. Why puny humans follow me? This is,
right.
It's a recurring thing, even just from the very beginning. As we said, he was, tracked by General Ross, Major Talbot, SHIELD, SWORD, villains, the Avengers. Everybody wants a piece of the Hulk for their own purposes. And that has a major impact on your psyche. So I'll, I guess, turn that over to the rest of y'all.
Well, I think it's the hard part about post-traumatic stress disorder or having a trauma experience in your life. If the trauma is ongoing in some capacity, like the abuse or some part of your life, is that because part of having post-traumatic stress disorder is hypervigilance, which is being on edge all the time and jumpy and paranoid, but it's hard to work through that paranoia and hypervigilance if it's still keeping you alive or if it's being validated by the things that are happening to you. So it's hard to let that go when you are a person struggling with that, because it kept you either alive for a long time, so it helped you for a long time, even though maybe now it's hurting you, or you still need it to keep going. So for him, poor thing, like, he can't really move past that. And so, and hypervigilance is exhausting because you are like on red alert constantly.
Right, and you could liken the experience he has to someone who's living in an abusive relationship, or a soldier who's still in a wartime environment, or beat police who have to be on edge and aware of the situation all the time. And like, finding a treatment would be a difficult thing to do, because getting buy-in for decreasing that level of hypervigilance would be counterproductive to survival.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hannah, you've been quiet for a while. You want to chime in with something?
Yeah, that happens sometimes. I just think that I can't imagine even attempting to talk about how he could feel less unsafe. Again, I think it's just all of those thoughts and feelings are reinforced all the time. So, and also his body is just full of cortisol all the time, like, just because his fight or flight response is up.
Yeah.
And so I don't know if his body could even calm down. Like, I wonder if Bruce Banner has a hard time sleeping, even though that hasn't been shown that that's an issue. I wonder if his body is just in constant alert mode, and how hard that would be just physically to have that experience, like, to just feel like you're on edge all the time, which again is, similar to people who struggle with PTSD, that their brain is always on and they don't have a time when they can calm down. So you can't even try to help them experience coming down.
They've definitely shown that in some of the pop culture iterations, where Bruce will be having a nightmare of things that he's done as the Hulk. And we're going to get into the dissociation in just a moment. But, to the extent that it's been shown that sometimes Bruce does have the memories of what he's done as the Hulk, he will wake up in a sweat, or he'll wake up with green eyes, or, he'll start to transform. I mean, that's even been shown that sometimes the Hulk will take over at night, and subconsciously he'll turn into the Hulk even if he doesn't want to, because the memories of what he's done have come back to him. And so he'll just wake up as the Hulk. And then so the Hulk persona will just take over. So to that extent, that is definitely something that's happened, again, in the comics and in the various, live action iterations.
Yeah. Plus,
absolutely. In the movie, they started. I'm sorry, Hannah, go ahead.
Well, the only thing I was gonna say, I apologize. When you mentioned the whole cortisol thing, the part that came to mind for me was, the Hulk persona itself is just nothing but just the adrenal glands going wild, and
it's the id as well, like just all your primal impulses, your lizard brain.
But that's exhausting. That's the type of thing, sleep, of course, is a huge factor in it. But I mean, at some points you're going to end up almost comatose. Your body has to shut down at some point.
Yeah, he must crash like crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it also makes it, I think the other thing that makes me think of is, we know that Bruce struggles with being able to control the Hulk, but I can't imagine how terrifying, like, both of Bruce Banner and the Hulk are both just kind of scared all the time and never know what's going to happen, sort of. Like, if Bruce is
that's okay. We'll bleep that one. That's okay.
Sorry. When if he would wake up as the Hulk, I don't know what that would be like. I mean,
I think he's so scared, because part of the paranoia too, not just being tracked, but I think he's so paranoid of being the Hulk and scared of himself. And so I would imagine in those moments where he wakes up as the Hulk, how traumatic, because that's like his worst fear, is the Hulk just happening, not necessarily when he's mad and can kind of tell it's coming on, but even when he's unconscious, like, that'd be terrifying.
Yeah.
I work with bipolar a lot, and I liken his rage states with the Hulk as with someone who might be entering a manic state and have done some things, especially if they experience the irritability side of it, where they might get angry a lot and not feel like themselves, and then have regrets later when they return to baseline. Like, I feel a lot of compassion for that when you see that, because you recognize that Banner is literally afraid of something that's within himself. And to carry around that level of guilt about what you're capable of, and knowing that it's really just an iteration of you, depending on which, of course, version of Hulk or which era we're talking about. But assuming that they're one and the same, like knowing that is within you has to be so guilt-provoking and so maddening for him, and why he's so driven to stay away from other people.
Absolutely. Yeah. The guilt over what he's done is something that, again, has been demonstrated numerous times throughout the character's history in the comics and throughout the live action animated. He feels bad. And that's, again, part of why he wants to just be left alone, because as long as he's by himself, he knows, both Banner and the Hulk know, as long as he's alone, he can't hurt anyone. And no one will bother him. He won't bother anyone else. So he's like, I'm just going to pull away from everybody. I'm going to distance myself, because that's the only way that I can keep myself safe. And that's the only way that I can keep other people safe, because I am a destructive force. And that guilt over that is something that he's carried with him from jump.
Which is, and this is something that you see actual human people do, not just superheroes in comic books, is, we see that a lot. People who isolate because they feel like they're so destructive and they don't know how to not be destructive. And that because also they have guilt, like, I should be alone and I deserve to be alone, and I don't get to have happiness and relationships like other people because I am bad. Something in me is bad.
Or substance abuse, which we haven't talked about at all. But substance abuse is definitely another version. Hulk is Stan Lee's version of Jekyll and Hyde is brought about by inability to control a substance issue. And
like when you black out.
When you black out and I'm sorry, I wasn't myself because I was under the influence. And the tremendous guilt that can exist in people struggling with substance issues is definitely a focus of treatment when you encounter people who've got guilt over behaviors they engaged in while they were intoxicated.
Yeah,
that's an excellent point.
Absolutely. So now we're going to get into what I know is one of Doc's favorite issues: dissociation.
Stop it.
Doc loves dissociation and dissociative identity disorder and multiple personalities and all those things.
Yeah, let me just make this clear. I'm not against the idea of the diagnosis of any of the dissociative category in terms of dissociative identity disorder, aka multiple personality or anything like that. My main thing is, I haven't personally encountered, for example, dissociative identity disorder in my career. But
I think it's pretty common. I mean, it's pretty common to not experience it in the field.
I was going to say, if you're commonly experiencing it, what kind of practice are you running?
I assume it's one of those things where you probably only see people with dissociative identity disorder, or you don't at all.
Yeah, if anything, I would say it's hyper specialized,
For sure.
Yeah. So my frustration just comes from the idea that, like I said, I do think that there are cases. It's just that the amount of media attention that it's been given throughout the years.
It's a sexy
over
diagnosis.
and over move.
Because it's kind of like a horror movie diagnosis in terms of what a scary concept, and what if someone you loved was a whole different person. And so it is definitely one that's been...
Yeah, Sybil.
Sybil, well, that's the real person.
Here we go.
United States of Terra and, Psycho and movie Split and upcoming movie Glass.
And Identity and one of my favorites, Fight Club.
Oh, yeah.
Fight Club.
Eddie Norton.
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Not that we know anything about
I do think it's definitely something that proportionally in, the arts is way more prevalent than it ever is in the field.
Right. So... with each episode, I try and come up with at least a spin on, something a little different to talk about with it. In this case, I'll try and I'll flip it around a little bit with the Hulk, with his aggression, his anger. There are times where he's at least able to respond to his environment. And in a way, it robs Bruce of the opportunity to do the same, to have a reaction. In other words, something happens with Bruce. He gets angry, and that's the last thing he experiences. Hulk.
So he doesn't remember anything as Hulk?
Well, over the years, it's varied, but often he doesn't know exactly. So from there, Hulk is taking over in that angry state. He smashes, blah, blah, blah. And then when things calm down, however they calm down or change, he goes back to Bruce. So
even in my limited experience of the movies, I know the Mark Ruffalo Bruce Banner doesn't seem to remember, because in Thor Ragnarok, when he turns back, he doesn't remember anything except for vaguely thinking that girl looks familiar, Valkyrie. But then in the Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton, it does seem like he has flashbacks of trauma as the Hulk.
Right.
Yeah, they start the movie off with those flashbacks. Even in the credits scene, you're seeing flashbacks of what happened with Betty and her lying in the hospital bed and all the destruction he caused when he first turned.
Yep.
Which was a way for them to just, sort of, because the Eric Bana Hulk had just come out a couple of years prior, and they're like, well, it's not fully canon, but everybody kind of gets the story. It's like, we don't need to see Uncle Ben die. We don't need to see Thomas and Martha Wayne get shot all the time. We're just going to compass every time with the pearls in the alleyway. Jesus Christmas. So we're just going to go through it in the credits. And if you're going to see The Incredible Hulk, like we said with this episode, there's a 99% chance okay, Bruce Banner, gamma radiation, let's move on. So so that's kind of how that got started. So that's, to Ben's point, that's why they show, the flashbacks. Okay. And then he remembers, and now let's start the story. But yes, but he does occasionally have, fleeting memories of the Hulk. I don't think it's ever been shown where he has like full recall of everything that's been done, which again goes to the dissociation point that. And then furthermore, and we were talking in the intro and the background and everything, you have all these different versions of the Hulk. You have the Savage Hulk. You've got, Doc Green. You have Joe Fixit. It's like the Hulk is not just a singular entity. It's not merely just the Hulk and Bruce Banner. It's you mentioned, was it Glass or a Split? That it's multiple versions that they're all within the same person. So there are numerous versions of the Hulk that have been shown over the years, and so the realism of which I think we all question, to put it mildly. But
I find it fascinating, though, that, I know why they do it this way, but you end up with multiple versions of the Hulk. You don't end up with multiple versions of Banner. You don't get that part splitting. You get, I hate saying sexy, but the more the more intriguing side that draws most of the attention. That one can still adapt and change and grow and have all the other experiences, but Dr. Banner still gets to be Dr. Banner, and that's that. And if anything happens, then nobody. I shouldn't say nobody cares. There are a few people that care, but he seems to get kind of get relegated to less, a lesser meaning. And if that's the interactions that he's happening, go ahead.
Which is interesting because you think he would definitely change because of all the stuff happening to him. I mean, I don't know what he's like pre-Gamma Ray Hulk, but I would imagine he becomes like probably a totally different person to people who knew him before, like maybe more hardened, maybe a shaky, jumpy person, maybe a really mean, standoffish person, like he would, I think, would change more than the Hulk would change.
Yeah. When you see it with Ruffalo's Banner, that he becomes more sheepish and more hesitant and more withdrawn, particularly with engaging with Natasha.
Yeah, talk about sexy. Those two.
Yes, please.
I could pass on him, but when we start talking about Black Widow, I approve.
That's where Ben's put all his comic book money as a kid. I would say with the Hulk, I think the way that it's portrayed in the movies, because dissociative identity disorder is what you see more in the movies and what's not really touched upon as much because it's a more nuanced, not as sexy idea, is just plain old dissociation or depersonalization, which is where when someone is experiencing trauma, they kind of either shut down and like almost like an out of body experience or a daydreaming experience, or they feel like what's happening to them isn't really their body that it's happening to. And they sometimes don't have any recall of it after it happens, or they might recall it way later. And I feel like that's more realistic and appropriate for Bruce as the Hulk than a whole different identity. I know in the comic book, he's all these different versions of Hulk, so that makes more sense. But I think in the way he's portrayed in like the movies and what seems like overall, is more someone who kind of dissociates in trauma, can't remember what he did when he was in trauma, but that's not a whole other identity. It's just the way he deals with what's happening to him.
Right, and what I liked about where, like, blending kind of what, Brittany, you're talking about and what Doc was talking about here is that it seems like when you talk about dissociative identity disorder, especially in any narrative format, that there's always one of the characters or one of the personalities, not characters, one of the personalities is a protector.
Yeah.
And as we're talking about Hulk, what more of a protector could you possibly have than the Hulk?
Mm-hmm. Hulk smash.
Yeah, definitely.
Impervious to bullets because his muscles are so strong. He's absolutely indestructible.
I could see why a lot of people who've gone through trauma, or maybe like kids who are currently in abusive situations, would really love the idea of the Hulk and reading Hulk comics, because that would be such like a fantasy to have like a part of you that could come out and just kick everyone's butt that's hurting you and can't be hurt back full physically.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
also would be able to have control. In some ways. I mean, like, not control of when he comes out, but like being able to be the
aggressive
one
control.
Yeah, the one who's able to be aggressive instead of the one who gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and the one who is scary enough that people that do attack it are punished for doing so and afraid to do so. Is that something that, people who have felt like a victim for a long time may fantasize about?
Right.
I never considered that, but that is a phenomenal point that it can be, a power fantasy for somebody to have that. And it could be, very, very appealing for those people. So absolutely, the Hulk can serve as a metaphor for that. So the last thing I want to mention, is, and we've sort of touched on this, is the reluctance of the Hulk to be the hero. And we have a number of episodes that we've done on people that didn't ask for this to happen to them. Jessica Jones was a very big one that we talked about. The notion that, you have this power now, and, with great power comes great responsibility. Trademark Uncle Ben, Spider-Man, whatever. But the notion that, like I said, the Hulk is the protector, but does he really want to be that? He didn't ask to do that. All he did was just try and save, Rick Jones from dying in the explosion. So to that extent, I think that was a move that Banner made. That was a heroic move on Banner's part. But then the role of the Hulk as the protector and the strong one, I don't think he really wanted all of that other stuff with it. So that's something, we can discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. And like to realize that the thing that you created to be the protector, or to be the hero part of you, is unfortunately coming with the side effect of uncontrollable rage and destruction. And Banner doesn't get credit for that. He becomes something to be feared. He gets relegated to the status of a pariah.
Yeah, and it's the idea also that this was pre-Hulk. This was his work. This was his role in life. It was his job to study these things and figure out, okay, what do we do with it? Is it something that, like, to get way back to what I had mentioned before, this is something that can be utilized in other ways, this gamma radiation and all of this stuff. And now it's had such lasting consequences. In a way, I think of the Manhattan Project, the idea that, you're using your intelligence, you're using your skills for something that you hope is going to help mankind. And now it's directly affected him, obviously, but also it's going to be affecting people around him in a way that he didn't anticipate, not out of any malice or, any other misappropriation, but simply from random chance. That's, the idea that you don't have control, even though you were trying to do the best thing possible in a circumstance, and is having that severity of consequence. That's taxing. Hugely
taxing. And especially with the movie version in The Incredible Hulk, we see that Banner's greatest fear is that, General Ross will get a hold of him and weaponize either his Hulk or the research that he did, and he wants to prevent him from getting his hands on that and that becoming a military weapon at all costs, to the point that he's choosing to live homeless in South America rather than be discovered.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we actually haven't mentioned yet so far. The fact that Banner is a man of science and an intellectual, and yet the Hulk counterpart is raw strength. There's no intelligence. There's no thought process. He is brute strength personified. And so that makes him the complete antithesis of Banner as a person. And so Banner, who, as I said, spent his life and all of his time and efforts studying the intellectual capacity. Now he has to use strength. I think just from a psychological standpoint, it's a very different mindset. Someone who's intellectual is not going to necessarily be into the physical aspect of things, and vice versa. Not that there aren't, intelligent people who work out or, strong people who can think, but just the notion that you've devoted yourself to intellectual pursuits, but now you have to spend all of this time focusing on the physical portion of things. I think that is something that, again, just to create a dichotomy there between the intellectual Banner and the brutish Hulk. I think that's something that, is very telling.
Well, I think also it's just the thing where, just like you're saying, his identity in general, like having to prioritize now a part of him that he never asked for or connected to and doesn't mean anything to him, and what that would be like and how he's devoted his life. What does he say in one of those movies? He has like 7 PhDs and now everything about him has been relegated to this gigantic baby that has temper tantrums inside of him. Yeah,
you're not wrong. So I think we've done a good job addressing a lot of the issues. Now let's move into the treatment. And as we often do on our show, we start with treating the individual in the universe. So basically, what would you do if you were a psychiatrist in the Marvel universe?
I love having this fun, and I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to do this. I wouldn't see Banner or the Hulk by himself for obvious safety reasons, but more importantly, I would recruit someone. And Anthony, I think
I know exactly who you're pulling from. I know you're calling in the Doc. You're calling in Doc Samson.
That's right. Because Doc Samson, for people that don't know, I've referenced him quite a few times in our previous episodes. Doc Samson in the Marvel Universe also was exposed to gamma radiation and also has super strength. The Samson name is a reference to the biblical Samson, the idea that he has long hair and therefore and his hair is green, and that's where a lot of his strength comes from. But the part that's relevant to me is Doc Samson is listed as a psychiatrist as a character in the Marvel Universe. So from that standpoint, he's had direct experience with the Hulk and has both talked with Banner and fought the Hulk. And although I can't say that he's quote unquote won, he certainly has held his own on more than one occasion. So I think I would have to share notes with him on really how to handle him, how to deal with him. That's the part that I would have fun with. It's more that when you're dealing with someone that can just go off like that at any given time, I wouldn't want to just automatically trigger the Hulk in an unprotected environment. I want someone like that as backup. I'd really like to talk more with Banner, because I think he would have to at some point come to some agreement with the integration of the Hulk, recognizing that it's a part of him. And without that part, I wouldn't be able to do anything else, because I understand, and I think it's certainly a reasonable reaction to say you don't want this thing, you don't, you want it eliminated, you anything you could do to get rid of it. But at the same time, if it's a part of you, how are you going to come to a conclusion where you can reintegrate the two? And I know there have been comics about that, but it's not in terms of therapy. It's more along the lines of, okay, can we create a different character that's going to create some interesting stories? So from that standpoint, I think that would be a fascinating way to go.
I think that's an amazing assessment. I think that would be great. I think for me, if I wanted to call in help, I would be calling in Professor Xavier or Jean Grey. Given the way that they were able to handle Wolverine and his similar levels of outbursts and rage and danger, particularly with his claws coming out at any point in time, sitting in a traditional treatment center, having the 18-inch claws coming out of your hands could be more than close enough to get to the provider. So having in a universe someone who can help get into the mind of possibly even both of them to work on help creating mindfulness and creating a way to help de-escalate both internally and externally, I think would be a really helpful thing to do as far as treatment, because with managing Hulk, we'd want to make sure that we're keeping him calm, and as we see in the films, we want to keep Banner's heart rate low. And if you had the telepathy of Professor X, you could have someone who can help communicate with both sides of that persona. Like, let's stay calm, keep the mind calm, as we see he does with Magneto and with Wolverine.
That's an excellent point.
The telepaths would definitely come in handy, and I know we've mentioned that on a couple of episodes, a couple of the characters.
Yeah. Ironically, you mentioned about with Wolverine. Actually, that was a big part of the episode that we did with Wolverine. The fact that he's had so much help from Xavier and his relationship with Jean Grey, and how that really started to adapt, which meant that my attempt at therapy with him in that skit kind of fell flat horribly, but that's okay. My ego wasn't hurt too much.
Ego's only so important anyway.
So Hannah or Brittany, either of you have anything that you would add if you were trying to treat Bruce Banner the Hulk?
Well, I mean, I think that the things that they do in the Incredible Hulk movie specifically are really good techniques that we'd probably apply in a therapy session, which is because you first have to help him calm down. And so just like the breathing techniques he uses, I don't know about that. Get very specific to Incredible Hulk, but he wears that watch that helps him know when his heart rate's going up. But I wonder if that is sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy of anxiety, like being hyper-fixated on this, and as soon as it raises, he starts to freak out, and then that makes his heart rate raise more.
That sounds like panic disorder, Brittany.
Yeah.
Being afraid of having the attack is one of the critical criteria of being diagnosed with panic disorder.
Yeah, that's a
versus
good point.
Anxiety
Also,
with panic.
Right, and also what you're describing in terms of being able to see a physical representation of what your heart is doing, and then in theory having some level of control. That's biofeedback.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's true.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I think also, kind of like with the integration of identities, is just dealing with all the shame and guilt and trying to, empower him as a person and feeling like he's in control, not just in this way where because it feels like in the movies and stuff, it's very punitive. Like, I have to control it because it's bad and I'm bad and I have to keep this part of me in check. And it being more like, how do we praise ourselves? I mean, it sounds silly, but like praising himself for keeping in control like he is. Like when he has 158 days in Incredible Hulk of not having any incidents, like that's very... I wonder if I doubt he gives himself any credit for that. It's probably... in his mind, like, yeah, I should be doing this because I've done so many bad things. But instead be like, look at what you were able to do. And like, that's such a good thing about you. And just pumping him up more and making him feel more in control through empowerment.
I think that'd be huge.
But I think, having Professor X and Jean Grey makes a lot of sense. I think just because they have a lot more experience, right, with working with mutants or working with people who have different powers, and how they're able to really how Professor X is able to help Jean Grey in different ways. And so I think it would be really interesting to see how that also with Bruce Banner's intelligence, how they could all together maybe figure out a way to just help him heal his... Yeah.
Let's go real in trauma. Because I was also distracted. What about Shiri, the sister in Black Panther, with all her stuff, her tech? She could probably do some killer biofeedback kind of thing with him that's less stressful than that watch. That's more maybe integrated to his body and maybe helps him... like has cues that help him to relax, like using that kind of biofeedback part of it. Like when this starts to kick up, maybe it releases like aromatherapy into his face or something, and then he calms down.
They make collars like that for dogs for barking. So, I mean, I could see in Wakandan technology how that could be a pleasant experience as opposed to citronella for dogs. That sounds great.
Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't even know that was
and even maybe being able to have some kind of trigger for himself that something that he does, or like a word that he says that like that's the only time when the Hulk comes out, like being able to have something like that in place, where that way he does have some control, and then he can use it more to his ability, more to when he wants to and to when it's necessary, which would then not make the Hulk coming out as traumatic, which could help him heal some of his traumatic experiences just by being able to have that control on its own.
And would you want to include, like,
I'm still
Betty
stuck on the mental image. I keep getting this picture now of just the Hulk with like a big cone around his head. It's like Hulk not like cone of shame.
He wouldn't like it.
I have to tell you, I've got an image in my head of like, I'm like thinking of like Hulk or someone like keeping Hulk calm and like getting a port put into his chest, like you would use for someone who needs some kind of blood treatment infusions, and like
puts like
basically
Ativan through him.
Well, putting some Ativan. So basically, I've got this image in my head of Hulk being. I'm going to cross universes here. I apologize to the hardcore fans of Marvel versus DC, but I'm seeing like Hulk as like the opposite of Bane. So having like a venom switch that he hits
to I like that.
Deactivate the Hulk side, so calm down all of that adrenal gland activation.
Yes.
And also, like, would we want to include and like maybe including oh my god,
I'm sorry, I do the same thing and then they yell at me, so you're encouraged, Anthony, and mine is I get a cone of shame for myself of don't do that. I did Batman voice and I got eye stabbed.
It was appropriate.
I also wonder, would you guys think that you should include like Betty in treatment, because she seems to have a positive calming effect on him and comfort.
Yeah, that's a great
as a model for comfort.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Make sure that he has the proper support around him from people that he knows. That makes a lot of sense. I did, before I forget it, there's one thing I wanted to say in terms of having someone like Xavier involved. My concern is that Xavier was one of the people in the Illuminati group that thought that Hulk was so dangerous that he shouldn't be on the planet. So I'm not exactly sure
that's hardcore for
he would be
Xavier.
the kind of guy at this point that, one, would either agree to assist with that type of treatment, and two, if even though Bruce doesn't blame Xavier for it, the idea that if Hulk came out, that probably wouldn't end well.
No, and that's something that I didn't know. So yeah, I agree. I don't think that even if Xavier was able to change his idea based around maybe getting to know Bruce Banner better, I don't know, or figuring out that there is a way to actually control it. But I think with Bruce's experience of him, I don't think that would be a good idea either. So I think Brittany's idea, I think of having Shuri, I think that would be the best, because also he would also be in a place that is really safe,
and they could probably put a little like
a shield
barrier thingy,
like a little,
like keep him safe. Maybe build him like a cool ass house where like
he'd be like a bubble boy Hulk, and like in the,
they probably have like they can make his house out of vibranium, and he can't like hurt it.
Yeah, I love Wakanda. Okay, so I'm gonna stop.
See, this is the part, like, every podcast, don't get me wrong, every podcast that deals with psychology or psychiatry is going to have treatment. We do in-universe treatment just for the fun of it, people. That's what you get with Capes on the Couch.
Yeah, I think that'd be great. I can tell you, like, the other thing I've been thinking about here, like, with in-universe is, like, imagining what a group would look like, and, like, thinking about, like, trying to screen whether or not, and I've been battling with this in my head, so maybe you all can chime in here, but I'm thinking there is having Venom in a group with Hulk could either be the absolute greatest treatment thing for both of them, or it could be the absolute worst, because of the Venom personality is that we can do whatever we want.
Well,
starts taking over and like encouraging Hulk.
Okay, I'm not gonna lie, man. You just blew my mind.
My mind has been blown.
I don't know, because here's the thing.
Carnage,
when
but
I've
Venom.
done groups with teenagers, you have to be very careful about making sure there are positive influences on each other. And so I get what you're saying with that with Venom. Like, would he be too encouraging? Especially since if we're going off the idea that Hulk is very immature.
Would they pump each other up?
Would he start idolizing Venom because he's like young? Hulk mentality is very young, and like, would he be like, Venom's
true.
Cool, like a cool teenager with a motorcycle,
in a group home or other such setting, or inpatient unit, as I have, you definitely are very cognizant of that risk. It's one of those situations, though, where if you're going to take that risk, you basically just put all hands on deck for, if something goes wrong, or you see any inkling that they're starting to, I wouldn't say not just idolize, but mirror the the behavior.
I think it's a bad combo in that Hulk's so immature and Venom is a lot more sophisticated than him, and I guess evil, for lack of a better word. I think it would work better if Hulk was the more mature one, and because then there isn't so much possible idol worship, and just because Hulk's younger mentality, he's just easier to influence.
Well, you got to also consider though. Spider-Man is an area I know more about than Hulk, but like when we're talking about like adding Venom here. Like Venom and Eddie start negotiating. Like the relationship starts out really rocky with a lot of Venom, like, oh, I'm in control now, I'm wearing the daddy pants. But Eddie starts to come in later, and he switches from Venom or from villain to anti-hero back and forth.
Do you think it's more that like is it Eddie LeBrock or Eddie Brock?
Eddie Brock.
I'm thinking
Eddie Brock.
Okay.
Yeah.
You think more Eddie Brock and Bruce Banner just need to have like a support group for people who have parts of them that take over their lives and ruin them?
Yes, I think that like having Eddie Brock and Bruce Banner together would be fascinating.
Totally for it.
I think that's more helpful than having their alter egos together.
Well, I mean, they're one and the same, both of them.
Well, you know what I mean.
I mean, but I think as long as we keep Mr. Sinister and Carnage away from it, it could be helpful. The second those two get involved, I'm adding layers, but those two, that blows up everything.
I got it. I get it. So we put the shield, the special bubble thing, around everybody in group therapy. And then everybody is safe. And they all have their own little bubble, their own little shield thing. Oh, that would be awesome.
This would just be really hard.
Keep the McAvoy version of Charles Xavier, not the Illuminati version. Then we've got a winning combination.
We need like old sweet daddy Professor Charles Xavier.
Oh yes.
Love it.
So I think we've covered in-universe treatment pretty well. Let's move to out of treatment now. Obviously,
out of universe.
Out of universe. The obvious notion that, someone's not going to physically transform into a 9-foot tall, multi-ton hulking beast aside, I think it's fairly easy to discuss how one would treat someone with anger management issues, intermittent explosive disorder, possibly, some paranoia and potential dissociation, all wrapped up in
bipolar, PTSD.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's throw the mismatch in, because the truth is we work through differentials. So what that means is for lay people out there, differential diagnosis means you have your rank list. What do you think is most likely the diagnosis? And then, subsequently from there, because nobody, at least the people that I work with, we're not so egotistical to think that the first impression that we get and the first diagnosis that we get is 100% going to solve everything. And we want to make sure we hit the proper points. But yeah, to get into that type of treatment, I'm gonna let the popcorn psychology people go first, only because there's a specific part of treatment that I want to get into related to medication, and I know that's like my zone when it comes to situations like this. So I don't want to just rehash the same things repeatedly. If everyone there has, and I know you do, have your own approaches on how you would deal with someone with this particular constellation of problems.
Well, I think I'll just jump in. I think it's in the Incredible Hulk movie when I know I keep repeating this, but it's what we watched last night. Him learning that martial art, I think, is something really cool that I maybe would suggest to a patient that was having anger management like him, because it's a way to feel sort of in control, like powerful in a more healthy, structured way. It's also a way to filter some of that anger you might be feeling into something physical. You're also getting more aware of your body, which would be helpful with someone who dissociates because of trauma in a real world setting. There's a lot of not feeling like you're part of your body or not recognizing your body. And so doing something physical can help you come back into your body and feel it and be more comfortable with it. And then in those situations where, let's say something did happen, like got cornered by a bunch of dudes, instead of having to blow up and really hurt people and hurt himself, he has skills now, like in the movie where he de-escalates these guys by parkouring and or just rolling them off his back where no one gets hurt, but he's protecting himself. So having more defensive in an appropriate way than an offensive stance, because you're so freaked out about how do I protect myself, so I just go berserk. And so if you learn a skill, it's more like I have a controlled idea of how to protect myself that I don't necessarily have to use. So you don't panic and go back to old habits of maybe like starting a fight or screaming or throwing stuff. You have a more confidence in yourself and how to handle a situation, and you don't have to rely on the explosiveness of your anger that might have kept you safe in the past.
I think for me, so when I talk about trauma, because I see a lot of trauma in Bruce, I am almost always going to default to using EMDR. However, in this case, I'm not going to go that direction, because I think that for him, that's probably the wrong thing to do, because one of the dangers
out on you, I feel like
that's exactly my concern, is that one of the things about EMDR is, though, even though it's designed to eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. Sorry, I'll start there for those that aren't familiar with listening to me jabber on about that a lot, because I really believe in it. But the treatment is designed to keep you present in both the moment and also able to re-experience your traumatic memory while accessing the memory, the physically stored memory in your brain, and moving it to more adaptive storage, so it becomes more like a regular memory than a frozen traumatic one. But with that said, I think for Bruce that would be dangerous for me, because one of the problems with that is, as you're re-experiencing that trauma, it gets really hard sometimes, and people become very emotional as we're working through that memory and working towards getting it into a more adaptive state, and it can be really hard. So I think for Bruce, what I would work on would be more with traditional anger management and work on more on the cognitive behavioral side. So working on breath control and body control, like we see him doing with Mr. Gracie in the movie, but also working with him on learning to scale how he interprets things, because one of the things we see with anger management often is that people create a distorted perception of reality and their role in things, and how serious an offense is against them or their role in something is. There's a lot of magnification. So what I would want to do is work on scaling on, like, okay, let's work on dialing that back so that we're getting a more balanced and accurate interpretation of what's going on, so that you're able to create a more adaptive response, rather than reaching the point where as soon as you get angry, you press the button in your mind that allows you to unleash the beast, in which his case is the Hulk. We see all the time, you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. You also see that with anger management people that struggle with that particular issue. Is like, oh, okay, now I'm going to get mad because you did this to me, so now I can get mad and you deserve this. And you see
ownership.
There's no ownership, and I'd want to work with him on learning to control that and dialing back that perception of what level is appropriate for what, and learn how to control the bodily reactions that come with each stage. So to make that super succinct, is what I would do is work with him on going, what happens at stage one anger, what is that? The mild irritation, and what's going on in your body at that time, and working that from level 1 to level 10, or 10 to back, in which 10 in my treatment is usually 10 is violence. So in Banner's case, I guess 11 is Hulk. So
turning up to 11.
That would be what I would want to do.
All right.
And I think, kind of piggyback on what you said too, Ben, with the ownership part of it, is sometimes when someone's been in this cycle of behavior for a while, they've decided, I'm an angry person and this is just who I am, and everyone needs to back off.
Right.
And they should respect that about me or whatever.
Absolutely.
And so I think building his identity to be like, no, you are all these things, and you can choose to be that angry person, or you can choose not to. Like, you can choose to let the Hulk control your whole life, or you can choose not to.
Right. And the thing to even piggyback on that is that drives me up the wall with anger is when you see people, it becomes that I warned you and you crossed me when I put up the warning, so now you're responsible for whatever happens.
Happens.
Right. Yeah. I think, to some extent, just we've all kind of done that. We've externalized.
Well, think about the phrase, you made me mad.
To situations. You made me angry. You made me do this.
Yeah.
I mean, we certainly, we see it a lot in like abusive relationships. We see abusers say that you made me hit you. You made me do this to you, because they don't want to take responsibility for it. But I mean, individuals do that a lot just in their personal lives. It doesn't always necessarily have to be something as dramatic as abuse or, to that level or to that escalated point, but it's still something where I think just from, maybe like a self-preservation or just maybe a lack of self-awareness that we say, oh, well, you blame it on the externalities. You're always saying, oh, well, this was the trigger for my response. This is what happened, rather than saying, I still retain the choice to ultimately determine how I respond to, things. And that's something that, at least I've struggled with in my life. And I've gotten a lot better at it over the years, is just understanding that, the only thing in this life that I have control over is my response to whatever the external stimulus is.
Right. Thank you for not punching me during this podcast. You've made great progress.
It's not over yet.
I'm kidding.
It's not over yet. You're still cruising for a bruising if you keep it up.
Oh, okay.
Keep running your mouth.
I would also like to thank Hannah and Brittany for not stabbing me after 17 episodes.
I make that choice every minute. Yeah.
So Doc, I know you said that you kind of wanted to.
Yeah. Well, I jumped on Hannah a little bit.
Yeah.
So I'll be pretty quick. So mostly, I think. Clearly, we would start out with coping skills and just helping him be able to calm down. But I think from being a marriage and family therapist, his relationships are just so hard. And it would be so hard. And it seems like I wonder if he even really knows what he wants, because he's always so focused on just being safe, or if he even really knows who he wants to be or the parts of himself. So I think I would want to do just kind of like identity work with him, maybe some role playing of maybe talking to the Hulk or talking to the people that he doesn't have a relationship with anymore, and just trying to get some of those feelings processed a little bit. So I think, what Ben and Brittany said is perfect. And I think that would work really well with him. But I also think that there has to be a part of him that is allowed to also process those thoughts and feelings about relationships, because I think his isolation is something that, shapes every contact that he makes with somebody like the Hulk, and knowing that and having to keep himself away. And how does he deal with that? That, Bruce Banner is human, and as humans, we need the social part of life. And so for him to not really have that, I would really want to explore that with him and see, and also maybe even talk about what kind of a relationship he could have with a significant other. What would that look like? What could he hope for? What's realistic?
Excellent points.
Okay. All right. I'm going to jump in here in terms of one of the other sides to this, or other set of tools in the toolbox regarding medication. First of all, depending especially on the type of anger and trauma or abuse, the things that we're dealing with, I wouldn't automatically jump to that. Anybody that's heard me talk about this before knows that even though that's a big part of my job, I don't take that lightly. If it's a matter of a person going through an intense amount of anxiety or fear, we do have, general classes of medications. The bread and butter when it comes to mood symptoms are the what we call the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs. You can look up plenty of those online in terms of, brand names and stuff. I'm not going to just give those, but, those are very slow acting medications for prolonged periods, for things that are more immediate. And I say this carefully because honestly, it fits well with the Hulk in that these are double-edged swords. It's a possibility if a person is going through such severe stress and anxiety that we can look at the category of benzodiazepines for relieving anxiety, but I don't want the person to develop the habit formation or the addiction related to those. Also, depending on if it's a matter of, especially if we're dealing with adolescents that have significant trouble with focus and attention and impulsivity, then we can look at stimulants. The main problem with that is if we're talking about more of a category where the person has an increased level of energy and aggression, then rather than making things better, it can actually exacerbate the problem. So I'd have to be careful with that. We have the category of, what we quote unquote call mood stabilizers, which are often anti-epileptics or lithium, things like that. I'm just giving the general gist of the different types of medications that can possibly be used in treatment. But it has to be tailored, first of all, to the person, to the situation. And it's something that I don't think of as first line, mainly because it becomes a situation, at least from the external factors often, because if we're talking about people that are being cared for, like adolescents, teenagers, or people with special needs that have caregivers or in group home settings or things like that, it unfortunately starts to take away from the idea of therapy, because it's basically, oh, you're acting out, take your meds, okay, fine, you're good, you don't want to go to group today, fine, never mind, as long as you had your dose before you went to bed and you went to sleep. So in a way, I'm just acknowledging that it's a part of treatment, but it's not meant to, and never was meant to be the primary treatment. And unfortunately, when it comes to anger, that is something that I commonly see in the emergency room. That's something that I'm asked for commonly from family members. They're not so much interested in trying to find people for therapy. They're trying to say, okay, what can you give them to shut them up? I hate to say it that way, but that's what I encounter.
As a child therapist, I get a lot of he needs to learn how to listen. He needs to learn how to mind me. He needs to learn how to behave, is what I get a lot from parents about why they got into therapy.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll get off my soapbox now, but
no, I think it is so amazing to hear somebody who prescribes medication talk about it in that way. Working in community mental health, like all three of us have done and still currently do, it's finding a psychiatrist who doesn't just want to drug somebody into a zombie state because they have such complex issues and most likely pretty severe complex trauma. Just to hear you even give that speech about how you feel about medication and how it's never been meant to just be something that's not used along with therapy is just such a relief. I feel like it's so hard to find that, especially with people who work in community mental health, because I think it's also, part of burnout of just wanting, to be able to kind of control and manage people that, you feel like maybe you've seen 1,000 times. So.
Yeah, I agree with Hannah wholeheartedly. We haven't really mentioned, but all three of us also work in care coordination. So if for people that aren't familiar with that, we work to catch people that have recently been hospitalized or have had crises and try to get them connected to more traditional support, so they're not relying on cycling in and out of the emergency rooms and relying on emergency level care, only seeking those short-term treatments and trying to connect them with long-term things. Go like, hey, there's community resources available for you. There are people who are willing to see you and create long-term relationships with you, and we can work to help you get connected to that. So hearing you, Doc, talk about all of that is really great for us, because one of the things that we see is people who are on the other side of the addiction, particularly when you mentioned the benzos. That meant a lot to me because working with anxiety a lot, I advocate for very controlled use of those. I believe wholeheartedly that medication and therapy need to work together, like you mentioned, but it can't be relied upon as the only source. Either one sometimes, that you need the interaction of both, and the cooperation between our disciplines needs to really increase much more from where it is. But you all are so busy doing everything that you're doing, and we're all so busy doing everything we're doing. It's hard to find that common ground, and it's really inspirational to hear you talk about that way.
Thank you. I greatly appreciate that. I've recognized even with my own colleagues that let's just say my take is not nearly as common as it should be. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, and Doc has mentioned a couple of times on the shows about utilizing all of the tools in the toolbox, but not simply relying on just one facet or just saying, well, we're just going to drug them and hope for the best. Taking a holistic approach and looking at there are a number of things that we can address here. And as someone who, when I was younger, was told by the doctor treating me, they told my parents, I'll just give them Ritalin and just give them drugs and whatever. And my mother was like, no, I'm not just going to give them drugs, because they didn't know how to deal with me. And it was easier for them to just drug me into a stupor so that they didn't have to worry and they didn't have to try. Whereas, so I certainly appreciate that approach. And again, we acknowledge that medication has its place, but it has to work in concert with therapy. It has to work in concert with addressing the underlying symptoms to work together. Otherwise, you're kicking the can down the road and you're just going to end up making a bigger problem for someone else. And I think that's a big problem in our society in general, is this over-reliance on medication and seeing things and just saying, oh, well, they were on medication. I don't understand what happened. And then they went off and, did something horrible or whatever. Well, they were on drugs, so I don't know what the problem was. Well, it's not my fault.
And I know we're going a little bit on a tangent here, but I think that goes back to the false premise, though, that somehow when it comes to mental illness or mental health as a whole, that somehow that means, wow, these people are horrible people, or these people are dangerous, and that's absurd. And I get tired of hearing those types of things. To me, I treat it similarly to anyone that's gone through any illness of any kind. Do what you can to find a way to improve the situation with the tools that you have at your disposal, rather than worrying about, is it something that's going to make other people feel better or give them a different idea. That's not the goal at all. The goal is for people to be healthier and be as productive as they can in life. That's all.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So I think we've done a pretty good job discussing the various treatment options. So now we get our first opportunity with other people. So for the skit and the therapy session. So let's see what happens when we get Bruce Banner and friends on Dr. Issues' couch.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Issues. Thank you all so much for coming to this group therapy session.
Thank you, Doc.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. Well, I know we're all here to help Bruce. We have some family here with Jen and, some very close people as well in Betty and Rick. But I just wanted to lay some ground rules here. So basically, only one person speaks at a time. Do not raise your voice. And let's all try to remain in human form during this session. Okay?
Do I have to?
I understand you're comfortable in your own skin, Ms. Walters, a.k.a. She-Hulk, but this is about making Bruce comfortable, and frankly, I think the session will go much smoother if no one is green.
Fine.
God forbid you look like a regular person for once.
What was that?
Ladies, please, let's keep the focus on Bruce, all right? Now, what I want here is for Bruce to have a safe space to open up about his emotions while still maintaining control. Bruce, what would you like to talk about?
I want to talk about the fact that I want to be left alone.
Why is that?
Would you like it if the military was hunting you? Wanted to turn you into a weapon? Wanted to dissect your brain and replicate the thing that you hate?
Actually, that sounds horrible. So how do you deal with the stress of being a wanted man?
How do I deal with it? Ha! I don't. It's that...
Doctor, if I may, Bruce doesn't like to mention that thing's name, if you can understand.
Well, sure, but...
Hulk, Mean Green, the Jade Giant. The one who kicks ass first and takes names later? Because Bruce doesn't want to. He can't even take the first step. That's why he runs amok. And if he'd let me...
Oh, I'm sorry. Let you? It's not like he had a choice in the matter. You get a luxury version while he gets the unsafe prototype. Bravo.
Stop! You two are just... You see, Doctor? This is how much that thing tears people apart. And he isn't even here right now.
Wait. Don't downplay what you just said. I'm sorry, what you just did.
What?
The breathing. That's deep breathing, man. I'm glad you have that skill. Do you have anything else?
I've done the deep breathing. I've done visualization, yoga. They all feel like Band-Aids. I just want him gone.
Like that's ever going to happen. No matter what you or Betty want, you're stuck.
Okay. I think we need to put this debate thing that's going on between you and Betty on the back burner. Look, Bruce is the one who... Wait. I just noticed. Rick, you haven't said anything. I apologize. I should have incorporated you more. What's your take on all of this?
Why you?
Excuse me?
No offense, Doctor, but everyone in this room except you has been directly affected by this situation. Everyone except you. We should be doing this with Dr. Sampson. He's been affected too. He can handle the situation head on if it comes to that. We're on eggshells here because we don't know if you can handle him.
I'm well aware of Doc Sampson, and I respect what he can do. But for the same reason I don't treat friends or family, this case got referred to me.
I'd like it on record that I'm not on eggshells at all. Let's crush him into the ground.
Jen, please. Rick, I'm here to help. Surely you can understand how an objective third party might be able to better assess the dynamic and determine a way to help.
I guess.
So having said that, do you have any suggestions? I'm asking Rick.
I don't know. Bruce, you're my friend. We're all friends here. If you're having problems, you can come talk to us. You don't need to involve anyone else. We're here to help you. We all know what it's like to have another side. We all find a way to deal with it, one way or another.
I'm glad you mentioned that, Rick. That's an excellent point. Each of you have, at one point or another, been able to, shall we say, transform, have other problems. Some of you are coping better than others, but you're all still here.
I like my coping mechanism.
Jen, please.
I guess I just don't understand why we have to have this conversation, because we've had some great times. You've saved the world more times than I can count. You're literally one of the smartest people in the world. Why are you so afraid of the Hulk?
Why can't you respect his right to do what he wants?
Can I?
Everyone always wants Bruce to do what they want him to do. Bruce, what do you want?
I want everyone to just shut up for a minute. Now, I agreed to this therapy session with all of you under the belief that it was going to be less stressful surrounded by people who care about me. But I realize now it's just turned into another situation where everyone only wants the version of me that makes themselves feel comfortable. Jen, you like the other guy because all he does is smash.
And we know she loves to smash.
And you, Betty, you want me docile because you've been ordered around by your father your whole life and you want to feel like you're in control. That's what pisses you off about Jen. For all her flaws, she knows what she wants and she gets it.
And then there's me.
Rick, we've been through, God, so many things. We've saved each other. We've tried to kill each other. You're like a brother to me.
Thanks, Bruce. Same here.
But I feel like sometimes you're more interested in him because of the adventure. You like the rush of it all. You love being the sidekick, and you need someone to go back up because you don't have the balls to take the lead yourself.
Hey, wait a minute.
Seriously, how many of us have you played second fiddle to? Me, Steve, Marvell, the other Marvell? You're a great guy on your own. Be your own hero for once.
Can I just interject for a minute here and say that I'm incredibly proud of you, Bruce, for having the internal strength and wisdom to actually know what you want.
I haven't gotten to you yet, Doc.
Oh.
You're the only one I can't pin down. Who do you want me to be?
I want you to be whichever version of Bruce Banner you're happy with.
And what does that get you?
It doesn't get me anything, other than a happy patient. Look, Bruce, I know you may find this hard to believe, but I have no ulterior motives. My honest-to-God sole interest is making sure you're comfortable in your own skin. Whatever color that is.
Sorry, Doc. I'm sure you appreciate it's a little hard to take statements like that at face value.
I know, and I'm proud of you for it.
Aw, what a Kodak moment.
First off, who even gets that reference? Secondly, must you constantly ruin everything?
You call it ruining. I say it's calling out a mushy, touchy-feely bullshit moment.
And we're back to this.
'Cause, please.
No, Bruce. I'm not going to let this head shrinker convince you that the Hulk is something to be afraid of.
He's not saying that.
Yes, he is. He's trying to manipulate you into being a p***. Come on, put his head through a wall.
Everyone, just take a moment.
The only one whose head is going to go through a wall is you if you don't knock it off.
Oh, please. Like you could take me. You're a cheap knockoff.
It's getting a little nuts in here.
Would you two take it outside? You're scaring Bruce.
Count me on that list.
A knockoff? I'm an improvement on you in every way.
Just remember, if you change, all I'll see is red, and that's not going to end well for you.
Guys.
Bring it on, bitch.
You asked for it.
Are you okay, Bruce?
No.
Finally, it's a party.
Buddy, let's talk.
No talk. Only smash now.
Look what you've done.
Hulk tired of room. Hulk go now.
Great. Another insurance claim.
Need a lawyer?
Get out, all of you.
But
all of you.
So that's what it's like to get angry and not change color.
Now.
You're cute when you're mad. Here's my number. Call me sometime.
Are you fucking kidding me?
Man, your insurance must just be through the roof on the building.
You have no idea how pissed off I am right now.
Please don't change color, okay? Just stay black, please.
Wow. And you just diffused all that anger right then and there.
That's what I do. That's what I do. Stay black, humor, not green, please.
Humor is a fantastic coping mechanism. Seriously, I always encourage it.
This is the sort of thing. That's the sort of thing we can only get away with.
Yep, and thank you to the rest of the crew. Thank you to Popcorn Psychology.
Yes, thank you, Ben, Hen, and Brittany.
Yeah, you guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for the invite. We really appreciate it. This is fun.
Very game for this. So before we head out, why don't you guys give another quick plug to your website, where they can find you, and all that other jazz.
Okay, you can find us at Facebook and Instagram at Popcorn Psychology. You can find us at Twitter at popcorn_psych. And you can email us at popcornpsychology@gmail.com. And you can find us at any podcast platform you use, iTunes, Podcast Addict, Podcast Republic.
And we are newly on Spreaker. If you want to check for us there, if you want to friend us on there, it helps add us. And please, by all means, if you guys listened to us today, liked us today, please go on and give us some reviews and some likes. Those things are hugely important for us. And be sure to do the same for the guys on Capes on the Couch. Those reviews and stars and ratings and everything are so much more important than anybody knows.
Absolutely. I can certainly attest to that. The ratings and the reviews, we certainly appreciate hearing from our listeners. So, you can find us on capesonthecouch.live is the website. Then we are available, as I said, on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, TuneIn, YouTube, iHeartRadio, Spotify, basically all the major platforms that, you can find us. We are on Instagram now. We have an Instagram account, finally, Capes on the Couch. You can find us on Twitter, very active on that site as well, always communicating. In fact, that's kind of how this got started, was all Twitter. And if you listen to us on a platform that allows you to like, rate, and review, please do so. I want to read a quick review from Staven for Life. Gave us a 5-star rating. A big fan of the concept of this podcast. The hosts do a great job consolidating years of the characters into important bullet points, providing a psychiatric perspective to the characters that create a deeper understanding of them, and describing the methods they'd use to treat them. Highly recommend. So thank you, Staven, for that fantastic review. If you'd like to have your review read out on the show, please, like I said, like and subscribe and leave a review for the show on iTunes or whatever the platform is. That's going to about wrap it up. And, please check out Popcorn Psychology. Thank you again so much to Ben, Hannah, and Brittany, and be sure to follow them, because we're going to be on their show talking about the Incredible Hulk Edward Norton film. So that's about do it. Doc, I forget, who do we even have next week? It's completely slipped my mind.
Oh my goodness.
I think we're doing Kingpin next week.
I'm pretty sure it's Kingpin.
So Wilson Fisk
Daredevil
episode, especially in lieu of Daredevil's recent cancellation.
I know.
Yeah.
Damn Netflix.
Yep. And then after that, is that the one we do Mr. Miracle?
I know we're doing Mr. Miracle at some point later this month. That may be that one, or that may be the following week. I don't remember. Okay. Well, stay tuned to social media and you will find out. So for our friends at Popcorn Psychology, Ben, Hannah, and Brittany, thank you guys again so much for coming on. You guys have been absolutely fantastic to have. And you're welcome back any other time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And so for Doc Issues, I'm Anthony Sitko. Thank you so much for listening. We will see you next week.
Capes on the Couch podcast is for entertainment purposes only. Dr. Issues is a psychiatrist, but he is not your psychiatrist and does not have knowledge of your individual situation. For any personal mental health concerns, please consult your own healthcare providers. For medical emergencies, please call 911 or the designated number in your area immediately. Remember that you are not alone and help is out there.